Hey, welcome back. I'm building a RANS S21. In January, I really pushed to get this interior closeout done because I wanted to move on to the engine, and I did get 63.5 hours in for the month of January, which is good. My goal is to put 60 hours a month in until I get the plane built and ready to fly. I'm guessing I've got about 400 more hours to go, give or take, so hopefully it'll be flying this year. I was going to split this content into 2 videos, but I didn't want to get behind on getting content out, and it just extended the length a little bit, so this is a fairly long video. We'll see how it affects viewership or if anyone comments on that. In this video, I put the Sombrella material on the flooring and sides. I install the control stick boots, and then I assemble the seats and get those put in. So with that, let's jump into building. I'm starting to attach my Sombrella material to my floorboards, and I haven't done this before, another skill set that I'm learning. Not a lot of videos giving you step by step. I've seen a couple where you just spray the 2 surfaces and roll it on. So I'm going to do a little test. I'm using the 3M77, which is what I've heard is recommended. I've got a Sombrella material. I've cleaned and prepped my surface, and it basically says for 2 surface spray, spray both surfaces, let dry to tacky for 30 seconds up to 10 minutes. Test tackiness with your knuckle. If it transfers onto your knuckle, it's too wet. If it's tacky and doesn't transfer, it's the right temperature. I also have a roller coming that I ordered from Amazon to roll out bubbles and everything, and that should be here in the next couple hours. So I'm going to test this without the roller just to test the tackiness, and we'll see what happens. Well, after about a minute, it was tacky to my knuckle with not leaving any residue on there. So about a minute and 10 seconds, I applied the 2. They were very few air bubbles. I didn't really need to roll it. I just pressed it down. I might be a little bit different on a larger piece. And it seems to lay really flat, and I'm going to give it some time to dry, but I think it's a pretty simple procedure. And I'll use my roller when I get it for the larger piece. But I would call that a successful test. Yay, good news. My fabric roller showed up. $6, free next day delivery from Amazon. Home Depot had one for 23 bucks. It just didn't seem like the right thing. So I'm good to roll my fabric now. I've cut my piece of material, laid it in there, and created about 1.5 inch overlap all the way around. And I think we'll just spray the surfaces and apply it and roll it on there. And then I'm going to let it dry and then do the edges afterwards, after it's dried on. It looks like the first piece is set up. The roll-on went pretty well. I was able to move it a little bit by keeping it off the aluminum and then kind of moving it around, set it up. I still have to trim the edges here. I'm not going to wrap this. I wrapped the sides, but I'm not going to wrap this because this will be covered by the closeout. So I'm just going to end it here. And so I'll trim it, and that should be set. I like the way that it came out. I mean, it looks okay, and it's much better than just the bare aluminum. I like it. I'm measuring and cutting the material for these side panels, and unfortunately these are already riveted in. So I've set up some boards where I can crawl into the back and kind of measure the material and clamp it in and remeasure it. Then I'm using a sewing cutting board and some sewing cutting material tools and cutting this material to fit these inside pieces. Okay, I've cut the material for my side closeout flooring, and I've shaped it, cut it, trimmed it, and I think I'm ready to glue these. So we'll see how this goes. My plan here is I've taped this off so I don't get that cement spray onto things. And I've got the piece of fabric over there, so my plan is to put a layer of the spray here, go over and put a layer of the spray on the fabric. Then while it's taking the 2 minutes to set up, lay the fabric in here upside down, come in, and probably take me 2 minutes to get inside of the plane, and then apply it to the panel. That actually went on pretty well. I got in there, worked it around. It's pretty flush. I've got these little tabs I cut, and I'm going to put some contact cement on either side and just wrap this around with the contact cement. But I couldn't spray behind here to get it on the second surface. So I just put this on like this, and I'll wrap it with some contact cement after. But I like that. I think it came out okay. I'm just going to follow the same process. I'm going to clean this up and cut the material and glue it on. That's it. Next picture will be it in the plane. I've finished the Sombrella flooring. Happy with the turnout. It's not perfect, but it was a new skill set and went pretty smoothly. A lot of measuring and cutting. Let me show you what I've got. I tried to cover up this hinge with the material, but then the flap wouldn't work. This is the access to my battery here that I put in. But I'm happy with it. I placed the closeout in. It's not all the way back and screwed in. It's just kind of placed in there for the look. But that's pretty much what my baggage area is going to look like. And I'm okay with that. The next thing I'm going to do is I've got to get the boots on here, the stick boots. And then I think I'm going to get the seats built. And then mount the engine. I'm going to attach the control stick boots. I did a little research on other builder videos, and no one really shows a kind of a step-by-step what they did. Derek Kenny, who's got a beautiful interior build, he had a whole different concept with how he attached it by cutting some support pieces out, and it's very different from what the diagram shows. All I know is the laces head back, according to the picture, and with this angle here, this boot clearly can't go on in that angle, otherwise it's going to be facing out this way. So I'm assuming I've got to cut the boot to kind of match the angle and then fold it under and then rivet it with the washers, which is what the diagram shows. But we'll give that a shot. I can't think of any other way to do it. Okay, what I've decided to do on this control stick boot is I laid the piece in there. I measured it to make sure it's going straight up and down. Remember, this is your level surface here. I've got this laying on the surface. It's actually at an angle. So make sure that you level it so that it's going this way and the boot is coming straight up this way. Then what I did is I marked it here where it was level. I want this to go in here now. And I trimmed part of it off. And then I went to the RANS forum. There weren't any other videos or much instruction, so I went to the RANS forum. And someone said it's just like if you were wrapping a hole with fabric. Is you make incision cuts, and this way the fabric will lay down. So I'm going to make incision cuts and rivet it. The other problem is these are all drilled out to a number 30, not a number 40. The manual calls for a 3/32 rivet. I'm just going to keep this at a 30 and use my 1/4 rivets and 1/4 washers and do the same concept, just I won't use the 3/32 rivets. I don't know why they've drilled this out to a 30. Maybe it's supposed to be like that, but it doesn't seem to be any harm using the Avex 1/4 inch little larger rivet with a washer on it to hold it down. So that's what I'm going to do to finish the boots up, and I hope it's going to work. You'll know in a minute. Let me kind of show you how I'm doing this. I'm not sure if this is right. So I trim it with a slice, look for the hole, then I take my little spiker and make sure I can find the hole. Once I find the hole, I have a cleco all ready to go. I release the spiking tool, take my soldering pencil, create a little burn hole, and that's kind of nice because the heat actually melts the fabric around it to kind of seal it. Take a cleco that's all ready to go and get it in there. and then I work on the next one. I'm going to have to make a slice here to lay this flap down. I just kind of working my way around, and then I'm cutting the excess material away. And it seems to be working going around. We'll see. I think I got it. You can see my patchwork of slices. If I turn it over, remember this is the flat section, this is the angle, so the boot comes up pretty straight. The rivets will go in this way, so all you'll see is the rivets on this side. This looks kind of like a mess, but this is pretty strong material, so even with the cuts in it, I don't think it's going to rip anymore. This is it's a very beefy material. So I think I'm just going to rivet in with those Avex rivets, and I think I'm done. Well, it seemed to have worked. I used the 1/8 Avex rivets. You can see the backside, trimmed it a little bit, and it all lays down pretty well. From the top side, it all tucks up underneath, so that's as good as I can do. I'm happy with that. I'm going to move forward. I'm going to put the seats together. It's in section 09D of the manual, page 107 of the text, and there is a figure diagram. And I grabbed kind of my seat stuff from my storage area, and we'll see if we've got everything to put the seats together. After you get your parts out, you cut this tube on the bottom by a little bit. Then you countersink these holes. These aren't in tight yet, but they're loosely. Countersink the holes on the outside, on both these sides, on the outside only. Then you drop the bolts in with some thick washers and loosely attach them underneath. And then you take this seat bottom pole, you identify a center point, and what they recommend you do is you take a straight edge and rub it up and down like that, and that's going to create a center line here. And then at 8 1/4 inches up, you mark it, and then you're going to drill that out to number 11. The next thing you're going to do is you're going to take these tangs, you're going to drill out this last hole to 1/4 inch, and then you're going to rivet them to the bottom tube using the CCPQ 62 stainless rivets. I've riveted these using the stainless steel rivets. The next thing it says is to attach the lower seat frame to this bracket you put on there. And this, it looks like it goes in this third hole right here. And you're supposed to use 1/4 inch hardware, but that hole is 3/16. The directions don't say anything about drilling out to 1/4, but I'm assuming we have to. So I'm going to go ahead and drill this out to 1/4 and then use the 1/4 inch hardware to attach all this in this mess right here. Enlarging that hole seemed to work. All the hardware is attached. You've got 2 bearings in the middle, plastic washers, metal washers, and then they tell you to tighten up the outside. And then we're working on the seat rails. You countersink all these holes to 120 degrees. Don't forget to change the bit on your countersink from 100 to 120. These are for the stainless steel flush rivets. When you lay this seat rail plate down, they have you put the end of the seat rail plate flush with the seatbelt bushing. I wasn't sure what the seatbelt bushing was until you looked for the directions in the seatbelt installation. This little bushing underneath the rail is for the seatbelt. So the end of this surface should be lined up with the front end of that bushing. And that's right down in here. Here's that bushing down here. So the rear end of this should be flush with the front end of that bushing. And I've just got it clamped in place. Then you got to make sure it's centered on this tube. That's pretty obvious. You then rivet in these sliding, they're called sliding seat rails. These are where the flush rivets go. And there's one on each side. And then you insert these tubes after you tighten the hardware. You insert these tubes, one for the lower and one for the upper cushion. The next step is to match drill these holes along the seat pan to a number 30. They're going to take an Avex rivet And then you've got these slider blocks that apparently go in along the bottom rail, and you got to cut out a notch here to fit the slider block. The optional headrest is next. You've got a separate parts page, parts list, and then about 3 diagrams showing process. After you get all your parts and pieces laid out, it looks like the first step is to drill a hole through the tube that is going to take a 3/16 bolt. Once again, you drag a straight edge over here, and that'll put little lines in the top of each of the tube to mark the center part of the tube. The next step is the manual wants you to drill a hole 6 1/4 inches up for a 3/16 washer and rivet, and I guess this is going to act as a post for a center bar. The next step is to create the second hole for these riv nuts and connection, and they tell you to pin into place. If you put a 3/16 bolt in here and one in here, there's enough tension to hold it still. Then they say to take a piece of sandpaper, fine grit sandpaper, stick it between, and then pull it out, and it's going to leave a mark on this tube where you want to drill the hole. Then you drill the hole all the way through using a drill press, and then that'll let you match drill it into this bottom frame. I struggle with this sandpaper technique, and if you just get right over it and mark, and you can see the tube here, and then you get down and you see exactly where it's touching here. I had good success just lining it up, and when I took it off, the hole was dead center on this bar, so I had to drill out these holes. This is that 1/4 inch quick pin, and I had to drill out these to 1/4 inch. They were close, but the quick pin was really hard to get in and out, so that cleaning those up a little bit will make it easier to adjust your seat later. Okay, the next thing we're going to do is we're going to put these riv nuts in the back of the seat frame. These riv nuts are actually pretty cool. What they do is they go in, and then as you pull them through a mechanizer, actually like a pop rivet, they're going to mushroom. The top 1/8 of an inch or so is going to mushroom like a rivet and rivet this nut onto your frame so you can bolt things in. I haven't used riv nuts in the past, other than earlier in the build a little bit, but I can see these coming in handy in a lot of different places. And I ended up getting a riv nut kit with all different sizes on it. I've already thought of 6 things I can use it for. But getting back to the plain build, they do give you some instructions that if you don't get a riv nut puller, that you can screw a screw into the riv nut with a nut here, and then by twisting this nut, you're going to pull it up and basically pop the rivet per se. I got a stainless steel screw with an Allen wrench holder. The instructions just says a screw, but there's no way. Even with the Allen wrench, I could not get this done. What I ended up doing as one option before I used the puller was to get an AN3 6A bolt, put this in with the and then use 2 wrenches to get it down. There's so much pressure that you've got to do to pop this up. Having a rivet here or a screw just did not work. And before I had a stainless steel screw, I actually stripped the threads on one trying to pull it up. It didn't work at all. So I'll show you what I did with this, and then I'll show you what I'm doing with the riv nut puller after I realize this is just not as effective as using a riv nut puller. Well, already failure, not working. So I have an AN3 6A, but it's got this non-threaded portion. The AN3 4 that I've got, once you put the nut on there, doesn't go deep enough, and you gotta have the threads coming through the end. So I don't have a bolt with a wrench head that is gonna work. So I'm just gonna go to my rivet puller, or my riv nut puller. Okay, this is the riv nut puller that I got on Amazon. And the way this works, it does have a little gauge down here based on the size of the rivet. You got to remember, you need a 1032 bit, which didn't come with any of the ones I looked at, so I had to order the bits separately. And what you do is you screw on this riv nut, then you open up the handles until you get to the length or the size pull. This is done in millimeters, and a 3/16 is about 5 millimeters. So I'm going to use the 5 millimeter mark for that. You tighten this screw up. You set the rib nut in, and you squeeze it, and that's like popping the rivet. And then you unscrew it using this. And there your rib nut is set. So much easier, so much. This was like $49, and it came with, I think 9 different bits and a whole package of all the different rib nuts for the different size bits, except of course 1032. They didn't have those, but a great tool. Can use. I'm probably gonna be able to use this a lot. So I'd recommend getting the tool. This double wrench thing or the screwdriver thing with the manual, I couldn't make it work. Maybe some others can, but this is definitely worth the bang for the buck in my opinion. The next step is just to screw in this headrest using some bolts and some thin washers and get that in place. I didn't screw it all the way in because I'm not sure if it's permanent yet. Okay, the next step is to cut from this raw stock. It's a headrest tube, and it fits over these buttons that you riveted in. What they tell you to do is to measure it, but you want to cut it at an angle and then sand it or file it so you fit the contour of the frame so it fits tight onto the headrest frame. Okay, the next step is they have you slide the covers over. You take the headrest out and you slide the covers over the back and the bottom. And what they tell you to do, which they don't tell you until after you slide it, is on this bottom post, you're supposed to slide it through a pocket here and then slip it over the nuts. This isn't going to slip over anything. So I don't have an answer yet of how I'm going to get this flap here over this bottom post because this isn't coming out without. And I can't widen the post to drop it out because the seat cover is holding on to the post. So I don't have an answer to that. Well, thank goodness for the forum. I've got some questions answered. What RANS does and what the forum recommends is getting a spreader. I had a whole bucket full of clamps, but none of them could get reversed to a spreader. So Harbor Freight had this, I think $7 or $5 or something. It's an 18-inch spreader. It's what RANS said they use. And what you need to do is get this spreader in here and open this up. Now, I didn't read in the instructions where you were supposed to remove these bottom bars before you slid on the covers, but it helps a lot because the pressure out made it really hard to get these covers on. Once you remove these poles, it kind of collapses and you can slide the covers on. But then you've got to slide this seat back bar into this flap and spread it and clip it onto the nut. Now I also shortened these by about 1/8 of an inch. They were just a little too wide, and you got to make sure both are the same length. And once I got them shortened, I was able to spread them open, get the bar on, and then have it clamp onto the bar. So now I've got my bottom bar in here. But that was the trick. Great device for $7. My research, your game, and hope it helps your build. Okay, the next step, they have you locate the holes both on the seat bottom and where you're going to put your headrest if you've got the optional headrest. And I use a soldering pencil, and you just poke it down and it makes a nice hole and it seals up the material nicely. And then you are going to rivet these seat blocks with these big old 64 stainless steel rivets into the bottom frame. The bottom part of these headrest posts are exposed on the back of the seats, so I did decide to paint them black to kind of match my trim. I decided to use the truck bed liner, just kind of as an experiment. The glossy black seemed too glossy, so we'll see what this looks like. The head covers go on this part, so this just the bottom part's exposed. So we'll see what this looks like after we put the covers on. I've attached these headrest bars to the seat backs. You can see the truck bed liner here. I don't need it at the top, just where the headrest goes over. I did have to poke a hole in this flap using the soldering iron, but that went in very easily. Bolts go in. Don't forget to put this center bar in when you clamp them in. Then you got to pull this guy in and put those in. And this is what it looks like finished with the headrest on it. I'm okay with a truck bed liner. I thought it had a slightly different look. The glossy black probably would have been just as good. I think I may take a touch of tape it off and just touch up a little, make these black as well. I'm not sure I like the bolts shining through like that, but that's what the seat's going to look like finished. And I'll put the second headrest on this one, which just it just slides over and Velcro straps on to the pole there, and then my seats are done. Well, I'm going to end the interior closeout right about here and get to work on mounting the engine. This is a good place to leave it, I think. A couple little things to do. I haven't quite finished this center part here with the wiring back here, but minor. The screws in here, I'm going to wait till I get this set. But other than, and the flooring up here, I got to put some flooring. I don't think I'm going to use this flooring. I think I'm going to use something else. But the seats came out well. I like them. The boots came out okay. I'm okay with that. The color and the scheme, I'm okay with that. And I think I'm ready to get going on that engine. Okay, about time to end that video. That was a long one. Thanks for staying with me. That section took 36.1 hours. That brings my build time to 1051.4 hours. And in the next section, I prepare and mount the engine. Ooh yeah, I'm looking forward to that. Thanks for watching. Dream it, just build it.